a much more dramatic, austere film, The Best Years of Our Lives,
Hmm.
directed by William
William
Wyler,
Wyler. Yeah.
who was in World War II, making documentaries and propaganda films, and who I found out recently went deaf from being on a in a bomber that was too loud, and he permanently lost hearing.
Wow.
That I think eventually he got some of it back, and like he had hearing aids throughout the whole rest of his life. But yeah, like went into World War II with ears that worked and came out of it at least partially deaf.
I mean, that really just touches on like one of the main things to talk about this movie is
Yeah.
this like really sympathetic um and woke for its time, certainly, like depiction of disability.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think, broadly you could say that this movie is about like trauma and PTSD and just like the ways that coming back from war affects you. It follows
Hmm.
three characters who meet in a plane on the way back from World War II, and come back to the same town and are reintegrating into their lives, basically. But what I was referring to earlier is this one character who lost both of his hands, and the movie spends a lot of time like with him grappling with his own feelings about his new, his hook hands that he's got, and how he navigates other people's reactions to his hook hands.
Yeah. Well, and also very notably played by Harold Russell, who plays Homer, the guy with the hooks, who actually did lose his hands in World War II, and so it's like he was not a professional actor. I think William Wyler had seen him. There was a like a documentary short about him, just in sort of like how he was able to like readjust and learn to use prosthetic hands. And William Wyler was like, I think the book this was based on had a third character that was like dealing with much more like kind of like psychological PTSD type symptoms. And William Wyler rewrote the movie to be like, no, we're getting this guy. We're putting this guy in the movie, even though he's not an actor. And he's so good in the movie that he won not one but two Oscars for the same role, which has never happened before or since. He won Best Supporting Actor, which he was nominated for with a bunch of other people, and then he was also given like an honorary Oscar for inspiring people just through like being in this movie, which is crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think it really kind of speaks at the times too, of just sort of like the immediate like post-war mindset in America, where like give this guy an extra Oscar just because of like him showing people, even if you come back with missing limbs, or if you come back, feeling damaged in some way, like there is hope. The movie spends a lot of time just focusing on like how dexterous he is with his prosthetic hands.
Including like focusing on him lighting cigarettes, which is kind
Right,
of
lighting cigarettes, writing stuff, like, unbuttoning his shirt.
but I mean, like, like another movie that deals with like, physical disability that we've covered is Freaks, which just pauses the movie,
Has a lot of cigarette stuff in
which
it too.
pauses the movie to show a guy with no arms and no legs rolling a cigar, like a cigarette with his mouth and smoking it.
Yeah.
uh
It was one of the 3 most important things a human could do in the 1920s or 40s is smoking a cigarette. You're like, "Can you walk? Can you open doors? Can you smoke a cigarette? Okay, you're good. You're set. You can live life."
Speaking of the cigarettes, though, there's a scene, a movie that we didn't cover from the early 30s, that I saw at a screening at the Library of Congress recently. Is called The Match King, and it's about like this kind of guy who rises to the top of industry and like becomes super rich and powerful, from and it's this kind of semi fictionalized like biography of this real guy, who ran a match company, and in the movie it shows him kind of coming up with this marketing thing, of trying to like spread the idea that it's bad luck to light a cigarette with more than to light more than two cigarettes with one match, in order to get people to light more matches. And there's a part in this movie where Homer is like saying like, "Oh, like I'm gonna light another match because I've already lit your two cigarettes, and I need to light a new one because I don't want to do something unlucky," which
Mm.
I thought was
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
Either that was a cultural thing that existed pre Match King, or Match King put that out into the
Oh no,
lexicon.
like I think Match King was referencing the real cultural thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I don't know. Cigarette culture. I don't. I'm not up on these things. Yeah. This movie is very good. I can only imagine how hard it hit for audiences when it came out, because it is like, it's so
It's very
I don't know,
real.
it's just very it's very emotional, and it is very, it's like, it's not, it's really refreshingly not melodramatic in most cases. Like, I
Mm,
think I was sort of expecting it to be a little bit more like
like schmaltzy.
anguish
Yeah.
and, yeah, schmaltzy, and it really isn't. It's very, it feels very well observed. And it also, I like, because it's following three different characters, we're seeing like a good, I mean, it's still, they're all white men still, so it's like the cultural snapshot we're getting isn't the widest, but it is like we're getting, each of them have very different home lives and like reactions to coming back from war. None of them are like these like bombastic. They're all just like subtle ways in which they feel out of place
Hmm.
or out of touch, or sort of like, that they have, gone off and done this, horrific thing that's incredibly traumatic for them, and then come back, and then it's like their hometown has kind of moved on without them to a certain degree,
Hmm.
because there's Homer with the hook hands. There's, I forget the other two's names.
There's Al Stevenson, who's played by Frederick March,
Yeah,
which
our old pal Frederick
I
March.
did not recognize him in this at all.
No, I definitely recognized him, but it is. I had not seen any Frederick March movies before starting this podcast, and now I feel like I'm like seeing like like his entire career play out.
Yeah, yeah, seriously.
Once again, playing an alcoholic, which I'm like, this guy is either he's getting really typecast, or like he's got a thing about playing
It's a
alcoholics.
different it's a different take on an alcoholic though. I think it's honestly like a
Yeah,
more
for sure.
nuanced good take on an alcoholic than in Star is Born. Um
Yeah,
but
yeah. It
and
feels
then
like, I think a lot less judgmental than Star Was Born or Merrily We Go to Hell.
oh, that's right. Yeah, Merrily We Go to Hell too. I uh
Yeah,
and then
and
also
kind of Designed for Living a little bit too, but yeah.
his I thought it was kind of interesting also that the alcoholic's wife in this movie is played by Myrna Loy, who gets
Loves to
top.
play the wife of an alcoholic.
No, I like she gets top billing in this movie, which is interesting, but also like yeah, it's like the Thin Man. It's like a completely opposite situation of the Thin Man, where it's all just like we're gonna have so much fun being completely sloshed and solving a crime,
Mm,
and this one's like okay, are you drinking a little too much maybe?
yeah, yeah. That is kind of interesting that Myrna Loy is first billed, because I think she was like the biggest star when this movie came out. So it was like, that was gonna sell the movie. It's like, put Myrna Loy up front,
First on the call sheet,
probably. Right. So Al
and then there's Fred.
Homer has got is his sweetheart that he's not married to back home, and then Fred, our last guy, is married, but sort of comes from like much, like, we get the sense that Al has like a very nice apartment, and Fred is like living with his parents in the kind of like the rundown part of town a bit more. And
Yeah.
then he finds out that his wife has moved out and like found her own apartment somewhere, and is working at a nightclub. Ooh. But so they all hit the town together at Hoagie Carmichael's bar at Butch's. And there were also, even like, they're all different ranks, and like the ranks don't really correspond to like It's like Fred is the highest ranked, but he sort of comes from like the least money. And then like I definitely thought there was like a deliberate kind of dynamic there where like their ranks don't correspond to their like societal status
Uh-huh.
when they come back home.
And they're from different branches too. They're like
Yeah.
Army, Navy, and Air Force.
Right, right. Yeah, Fred was a bomber, and it's like, hey, he's looking for jobs, and they're like, hey, what skills do you have? And he was like,
Well,
none.
I was a soda jerk, and then
I
I
can
was a
aim
bomber.
bombs really well. And they're like, well, we don't really have any use for that, so you're gonna go back to your job as a soda jerk.
Yeah, it's so I mean, this movie, like I think like we were talking about, like it is using these three characters to examine different aspects of the kind of returning to civilization experience for people who have just been at war, and the issue of employment is and basically Fred is all about like what does your army experience or your air force experience like mean um it
Hmm.
as you're trying to reintegrate into society, but then also he's the one who kind of represents PTSD in this movie
Yeah.
as well, where he keeps having these recurring nightmares that are like reenacting this kind of horrific scene from his past, or from when he was in a plane. And like different characters have different levels of like sympathy basically for his experience.
Yeah.
And then one for disability and one for I don't want to and want to drink my problems away basically. Although I don't think that like the Al character is like necessarily a sad drunk, but
No, and I do feel like Al's character is dealing with a lot of like he's dealing with like family stuff, a lot of sort of like there's a degree to which also like his family have kind of become more, I guess, autonomous without him there. And so he's like, I'm like
mm-hmm.
the man. He comes back and is like, I'm the man of the house, and they were like, cool, like we're going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, like his kids are older, so it's like it. There's that thing where it's like he feels sort of like so out of touch with them too. And then yeah, his one daughter is falling in love with Fred too, so that leads to a whole lot of drama there. The like romantic subplot between Fred and what's her name, Wilma, Al's daughter, is like it definitely starts
Oh
out a
no,
little
Wilma.
weird.
No, no. Wilma is Homer's.
Oh no, it's
Homer's
not Wilma, it's
girlfriend.
Peggy. It's
Fred,
Peggy.
Fred and Wilma are from the Flintstones, but this does have two characters named Fred and Wilma in it.
True. That's right. Fred and Peggy. It starts out where Fred is drunk and Peggy lets him sleep in her bed. And then he wakes up in her bed that morning, not really remembering the night before, and is like,
Yeah.
did I do anything bad? And she's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
And this was Peggy. We saw her in Shadow of a Doubt.
Yeah, very true.
Muriel
It
Wright.
took me a second. It took me a second to recognize her, but Teresa. Right?
Teresa Wright. Muriel Teresa Wright. Like another thing with Al is that this movie like kind of touches on microaggressions before that term had any kind of
Mm.
existence in the parlance. His journey, Homer's journey in this Homer's Odyssey in this movie is kind of about like him not accepting that other people will accept him, and him
Mm-hmm.
grappling with like everyone. There's a point where he's like, either everyone is staring at my hooks or not, or deliberately
Mm.
staring away from my hooks. And
Yeah.
that feels very real. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I've definitely been in a situation where like somebody kind of has some kind of like I don't know what like they have something kind of going on like physically that uh I like you immediately have to make this decision of like do like, okay, I don't stare, but I don't not stare too much, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's it feels very real. It's like the ways that people struggle with dealing with that. Like you don't want to be a jerk about it, but there's like different ways of being a jerk about it, and like you can
Yeah.
see from
Yeah.
Homer's perspective all of the ways that he's feeling sensitive to that.
And yeah, it does definitely feel like Harold Russell, the actor who plays Homer, is like definitely drawing upon a lot of his real experience. I'm sure with that, like for someone who has never acted on camera before. I mean, he's playing a sort of play a character that's not that far off from his himself, but like he brings it. He does a really good job.
Yeah.
Also, like I think something I was thinking about just in like the ways in which this movie deals with right people returning from war with injuries or not being able to find work because like their skills don't translate, things like that. It's like these are all things that are still problems now. Like
Yeah.
these are all problems that veterans still have now that they also had after World War II. That is like it's kind of nuts that none of this has
Yeah.
been like addressed
Right.
to a degree where it that feels acceptable.
It's well observed, certainly. I think that
Yeah.
I also really like that this movie, I think it kind of resists jingoism for the most part. Like
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
think is
Very
sort
much
of
so.
refreshing for a movie all about like, military people, right? It's like it's a movie that is not, it's treating what they, what they did seriously, and uh you know relatively reverently, but not like rah rah reverently,
Yeah.
it's just dealing with them as people in like a very human way,
Hmm.
which I think is, it's not something that you typically see for like a military related picture.
Right. It's a very like pro veteran movie, and it's very sympathetic towards like the the issues that veterans have to deal with while still not feeling jingoistic. Which I'm sure also was like a thing that William Wyler was. I don't know how much of that was like a deliberate attempt to like do it that way, but it feels like he is also putting a lot of his own war experience into this movie. I think
Hmm.
there's a there's the one scene where they're at a bar and there's a or at like a diner and there's a guy reading a paper who or no, it's not a diner, it's at the like the department store where Fred works, right? He gets he goes back to his job at the department store and he's like working at the beauty counter and has a show to jerk and like making ice cream for people. And there is something I think that is kind of funny, I think deliberately a little bit funny, about like Dana Andrews, who plays Fred, is like a very like stock 1940s like square jawed looking dude.
Yeah.
And I think there is a like deliberate way in which they're like not necessarily emasculating him, but they're taking this like very kind of like classical like World War II hero looking guy and putting him in these like like jobs that like teenagers would have.
Yeah.
And that does feel very deliberate that he's sort of like I like went away for like 4 years and like was blowing things up, and now I come back and it's like here go like make this ice cream cone for someone. That's the only job you can get.
Yeah, it's like, I was a kid and then I went and like became a man, but now
Right.
I can't carry that on because nobody cares about what I did. And so now
Yeah.
I go back to being a kid again, basically.
Yeah. But so there's a scene where he's right working the ice cream counter or whatever, and Homer's there, and there's another guy who is basically saying like we as like the country of America like joined the wrong side of the war. Like he was saying like he's a Nazi sympathizer. He's like we shouldn't have fought them. We should have joined that side. And Homer was like, "Go fuck yourself, asshole." As does Fred, and they get into a big fight, and Fred gets fired because he socks him one as he should have. Um, but that it's I was surprised at that scene in 1946 that they would even have a character like voice that there would be like post World War II Nazi sympathizers just like out and about, which is kind of, I mean, feels very it felt very I don't know, prescient, or it hit home
Hmm.
uh watching it in 2025 for sure.
The first neo-Nazi,
I mean, far from the first.
the first
And far from the
neo,
last,
the first
sadly.
neo-Nazi in this
Oh,
movie.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. True, true, true. But right, even like the fact that this movie is addressing how like not all Americans were like on board with fighting the Nazis before or after World War II.
Right. Yeah.
Um and even like that too kind of feels like a surprising, I don't know, just a surprising thing to put in this movie. More nuanced than, I feel like I'm giving like backhanded compliments like I'm surprised this movie is smart, but um I think it's 1940s movies tend to have very sort of like broad themes, like big ideas, and like they don't necessarily trade in subtlety as much as this does.
Hmm.
Um and I mean this movie won best picture at the Oscars in 46.
I'm stunned at how
Um
little we pay attention to the best picture.
right, because that's the thing about best pictures, like a lot of those movies are kind of forgotten or like don't feel like they're necessarily like the most culturally relevant movie from every year.
Yeah.
So it does feel like they don't always align with like the movies that get remembered the most. Apparently Steven Spielberg watches this movie once a year. It's one of his favorites. So that's fun. I finished watching that Netflix documentary Five Came Back about William Wyler and John Huston and Frank Capra, all the guys who like went off to work for like the World War II filmmaking and like all of their experiences and stuff
Hmm.
kind of afterwards. And so there's a good chunk of that about this movie and about like Harold Russell and about William Wyler sort of like taking his war experience and like putting all of that into this and like trying to kind of making this movie to as a like way to kind of support his like all the people that he had uh served with, which is kind of, I like that sentiment,
Hmm.
I guess, of it, that like, because I think part of this movie is also very much about like civilians on the home front who like don't understand what people went through
Right.
and kind of don't understand like the psychological place that they're at. I also feel like, I don't know, such small potatoes compared to World War II, but I feel like even like pre and post COVID, the degree to which there was just a feeling of like stuff has changed and I don't feel comfortable anymore, kind of.
Right.
Like that was just a way that I feel like I was able to kind of relate to it in a more personal way.
Hmm.
Like that, it reminded me of that feeling of just like, oh yeah, things are like, I'm trying to like go back to the things I used to do and it doesn't feel the same.
Interesting. Yeah. True. Yeah. Some context has changed for in both yourself and the world in both of those
Yeah.
cases. I don't have a lot more to say, but like one spare note is that Greg Toland did the cinematography here, and there are a
Oh,
couple of shots with
gorgeous.
just incredibly deep focus, like
Yeah.
wacky
Yeah.
stuff going on, where like somebody you're supposed to be paying attention to somebody in like a tiny little corner of the screen, like 400 feet away.
It does feel like even if I didn't know that, I'd be like, did Greg Toland shoot this movie?
Yeah.
It has a lot of his signature stuff in it. Also, one thing they point out in that documentary that I think Spielberg talks about in it is how like the movie is very visually is pretty not generic, but it's pretty plain. Like just there's like the deep focus stuff,
Yeah.
but it's very like the camera doesn't really move. It's very sort of like, here's a room, here's people talking. That's what we're gonna show you, and it doesn't look bad, it doesn't look bland, but it's not like the camera's not doing a lot. Until the scene where Fred goes to, he's like looking for work, he gets fired from his ice cream job, and then he goes to an airplane graveyard full of like old bombers and fighters that have been like stripped for parts, and he's walking through this like forest of like decommissioned airplanes,
It's such a
and suddenly the
stunning,
camera
like
starts,
stunning image.
suddenly we're going to like crane shots and dolly moves and stuff, and it's like it feels like it's, we're getting like drawn into his brain in a way,
Yeah.
because like the movie has been so restrained with its camera moves up until that point, and then it's like putting all of it into this one scene that is all wordless. If it was like walking through this stuff
It's a
and
plane
like climbing into the
graveyard,
plane.
and he is, you know, it feels like a graveyard for all of the people who died around him. Also, like
Yeah.
it is like this really eerie, yeah, like forest you were saying. Uh,
There's all these like they're set up in these like long rows and it's like making all these kind of weird geometric shapes and
yeah,
things.
it's really
Yeah,
striking.
it's a yeah. And it feels really especially like visually distinctly different from the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and then there's a part where he climbs into a bomber and sort of tries to have this sort of
Mm,
experience, like he just kind of sits there and almost just kind of meditates in a way to just like kind of try and like get through his experience, to try and like put himself back in a bomber in a completely safe place and like
yeah.
relive it in his mind to like get through it. And then
But I feel like
the
it's
camera
like
does all this like subjective stuff around him while that's happening.
I think it's kind of him like returning home a little bit too. Like
Yeah.
he's returned home to like his hometown, but then it's like he feels so out of place, and so he goes to this airplane graveyard and goes and
Uh,
sits in the bomber, and he's like, "Oh, like." He doesn't. This is never expressed in the movie, but I get the sense just through context clues that like that is a moment where he's like, "I've spent so much time sitting in the front of a bomber that this now feels more comfortable or more safe or more like home,"
it's a womb.
which is heartbreaking. Yeah,
He's returning to a womb of safety. If you want to
yeah.
get all like Freudian on it, you know?
But I feel like that's there in the movie. I feel
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
inviting that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like the movie is dipping into I think not necessarily surrealism, but it's dipping into sort of a little bit more of that kind of like heady psychological imagery, I guess, than the rest of it. Yeah, good stuff. And then Homer and Wilma get married at the end, and everyone is happy.
Yeah.
And then Fred and Peggy get together too. After Fred leaves his wife because his wife is mean to him. We didn't really talk about that plot
It's a
line
love
that much,
triangle,
but
whatever.
yeah.
How many love triangles have we have we covered?
I,
It's
I've
ridiculous.
far too many. Quick, one last thing. I do want to shout out Dana Andrews' drunk walk acting. I think is phenomenal in this movie. Like his walk of like he's like standing kind of too straight. It's that thing of like good drunk acting is like trying to act sober, you know?
Uh-huh.
And it's like just his like slow walk when he's like you can tell that he's just like trying to keep himself upright. I was like, I know that walk. That's good. That's good drunk acting right there.